This video made use of AI to dub the audio from Punjabi to English, but we have not used AI to change or alter anything anybody has said in this video, and all of the words that you hear are direct translations of the original speech. On the 9th of August 2020, the Indian farmers' protest began, a protest that saw hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets of India, far from Punjab, to protest the Farmers' Bill, or anti-farm laws put into place by the Indian government. Eventually, the protesters made their way all the way to Delhi, the nation's capital, which is around 400 kilometers south of Punjab. Protests were labeled as the single largest protest in human history, and the protest was specifically against 3 farm acts that were passed by the Parliament of India in September 2020. The acts, often called the Farm Bills, had been described as anti-farmer laws by many farmer unions as well as politicians from the opposing side of the government, and protesters claimed that it would leave farmers at the mercy of corporations. Essentially, these changes ruined the market for independent farmers, specifically the Jat people who Sidhu was often singing about. The protest demanded the creation of a minimum support price bill. This would ensure that the corporations can't control the prices that they were willing to pay the farmers, creating a fair market for the farmers and stopping them from being robbed out of their produce. The union government, however, clapped back and maintained that the laws would make it effortless for farmers to sell their produce directly to big buyers, and stated that these protests were based on misinformation. Other reasons for the protest included record levels of farmer suicides and low farmer incomes, with some articles pondering if climate change was the real issue here. Eventually, tens of thousands of people marched towards the Indian capital to protest against these bills, but the protesters were met by police armed with water cannons, tear gas, and they were beaten with batons in an attempt to fend them off. The protest saw police barricading hundreds of miles worth of roads leading to Delhi, and several violent clashes were seen between Indian police and farmers.
Police in India fired tear gas shells at crowds of protesting farmers as they began their march to New Delhi to protest crop prices. The march is just the latest in a series of such protests going back more than 2 years, and it comes months ahead of national elections in which Prime Minister Narendra Modi will seek a 3rd term. Farm unions hope to force the government to make a law committing to provide higher state support or price guarantees. Talks on Monday failed to yield results, with farmers saying that the government was dragging its feet on meeting their demands.
हाँ, देखिए किसान कितना पीसफुल है, कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा, फिर भी आप ऊपर क्या बोलते हैं, रॉबर्ट से ऊपर से हंजू गैस फेंके जा रहे हैं, ड्रोन से वो गया आगे 3 लगे और ड्रोन भी रखा गया। सिचुएशन ये है कि अभी नौजवानों ने इनकी एक लेयर जो है वो पटरी है जो इन्होंने लगाई हुई थी, उसको उखाड़ कर ले गए, एक बैरिकेड को ले गए हैं हमारे नौजवानों, और बाकी सब भी जो है उसको भी उखाड़ के सबको ले जाएंगे।
The issue became so mainstream that Punjabi people all around the world began to join in on the protests, even gaining the support of popular celebrities like Rihanna, who publicly tweeted about the situation following the breaches of human rights that the police had used against the protesters. Delhi police would even switch off access to the internet in areas local to the protest, likely to stop any coverage of the issue, as well as attempting to hide the violence that they were dishing out towards the protesters. The protest even saw the farmers storming the historic Red Fort and raising the Sikh flag, the Nishan Sahib. The significance of this flag being raised here is extreme, especially when you consider the history. The Red Fort was originally a Mughal fort built in the 17th century, but these days it's more of a tourist attraction. But during the Mughal invasion, the Sikh army would go to war with the Mughals, hence the flag being raised here being a major victory, an important symbol and motivating factor behind the protests. But eventually, in November 2021, after over a year of protests, the government would choose to backtrack on their laws, giving in to the protesters' demands, with headlines circulating describing India's Prime Minister Modi as bowing to protesters and repealing the controversial farming laws. But whilst the protests were just starting out in 2020, the people of Punjab began putting pressure on entertainers with mass influence to speak out on the issue and the brutality of the police. However, many chose to stay silent in fear of ruining their place amongst the elite in India and out of fear of upsetting the government. But Sidhu Moose Wala, with his revolutionary spirit, chose to speak up and get involved in the cause. Initially, Sidhu shared his interest and requested to join the protest, but the unions declined his request as they feared his presence would cause a distraction. But by September the 25th, Sidhu chose chose to begin his own collective, organizing supporters on social media and leading a massive march on Chandigarh in Punjab. Now, choosing to join a protest against the Indian government whilst also having a hand in politics was a very dangerous game for Sidhu to play. At this point, he was actively trying to bring about revolution, using his public profile to rally the people against the system. This was truly a brave move, but this shows the lengths that Sidhu was willing to go to stand with his people, choosing to stand up for what he believed in, no matter what the consequences were. On the 26th of December 2020, Sidhu released a political song entitled Punjab My Motherland in support of the farmers' protest. The song would also show Sidhu's support for the controversial Khalistan movement. Khalistan is the name of a proposed independent state that many Sikh Punjabis want to bring about in India. The idea is to separate the Punjab region from India and forming its own country named Khalistan. Due to Punjab being a very resourceful region due to its farmland, India at large has always pushed back against the idea of an independent Khalistan. For Sidhu to show his support to the controversial and revolutionary cause was a very bold move at the time, as the Indian government has not been shy to assassinate anybody who dissents with enough influence, with a very recent case that found the Indian government had allegedly assassinated a Canadian national in Canada just for advocating for the independent state of Khalistan. The music video for that song, Punjab, My Motherland, features a compilation of multiple painful eras in Punjabi and Sikh recent history, such as showing the bullet holes left from the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the 1984 anti-Sikh riots, as well as many beloved Sikh warriors showing the strength of Sidhu's people. Other clips of violence against protesters would also be shown in the video, and the song begins with a speech from Bapur Singh Malbir, a man who delivered a powerful speech calling for an independent Sikh state of Khalistan to be established. The speech references the power of taking up arms, claiming without sovereignty there's no justice. Sidhu begins the song referencing a very controversial figure in India who's beloved by the Sikhs, Saint Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, a man who aimed to spread the original values of Sikhism that he believed had been polluted over centuries by the corrupt Indian government. He was also a key figure in the Khalistan movement. Bhindranwale wanted freedom and basic human rights for his people, but he was demonized by the media and government and was labeled as a terrorist. Sidhu would continue singing on the song that he can't be forcefully held down by the government, just like the state of Kashmir. Now, the song is actually delivered from the perspective of Punjab itself, so Sidhu is singing like he actually is the nation of Punjab, and he's singing about how that region itself can't be held down by the government. During this time, inhabitants of the region felt oppressed by the Indian government, and Sidhu would even reference the Sikh missiles who raided and conquered Delhi, almost putting up a sign to wage war against the Indian government. And Sidhu would continue to boast of Punjab's history and how the region would always succeed in the face of adversity, referencing an ex-ruler of the region who had battled with Alexander the Great. Sidhu then takes aim at the Delhi police, ordering them to put down their batons, and warning the police that the farmers who are protesting may return to their roots of the Sikh Khalsa army. Now, the Sikh Khalsa army was the military force that operated in the Sikh Empire during the late 1700s and late 1800s. In the next verse, Sidhu then mentions how Delhi has always been anti-Sikh. He then says in the third person, from the perspective of Punjab, that Sidhu will chew up the state like a mango seed. Now, what he's doing with this song is crazy if you really think about it. He's taking on the persona of the Punjab region itself and literally telling the people to rise up in this song. Now, this was a bold, brave, and arguably reckless move, as going directly against the Indian government in this way is a far cry from similar protesting in a Western country. Many conspiracies have spread over the years regarding the Indian government allegedly assassinating numerous celebrities that chose to stand up for the farmers and the Sikhs. One example is the former actor turned activist Deep Sidhu. The former actor was one of the main pillars in the farmers' protests, but mysteriously in early 2022, he was found dead in a car wreckage, and many people believe that foul play may have been involved. Now, there were allegations that the police may have planted evidence to make it appear that Deep Sidhu was intoxicated whilst he was driving, but the farmers believe that he was assassinated due to being such a large figure in the movement against the government who held too much influence, with some Twitter accounts even predicting the assassination by the Indian government before it had even happened. This incident shone a light on the difficult relationship between the public, the government, and media outlets such as Zee News. Zee News is a mainstream media outlet within India that has reportedly been labelled as biased towards the government, with petitions created online requesting the platform be taken down for misleading and biased journalism in favour of the authorities. Soon after the incident, it was circulated that alcohol was found in Deep Sidhu's car, but the video of the supposed alcohol in the car was then fact-checked by an independent news company who had videos from immediate witnesses to the wreckage who claimed that there was no bottles of alcohol in sight. Further discrepancies would come to light after the Delhi police began retracting their own statements as to how this crash occurred, as well as differing statements regarding the tyre marks behind the wreckage package which allegedly indicated a hard break had taken place. Now, with the track record of the Indian government and the choices that Sidhu had made in 2020 to represent his people, moving into 2021, Sidhu would need to watch his back at every corner. He was calling upon his people to rise up and establish a breakaway state in songs with hundreds of millions of views. This went far beyond anything Tupac ever put out and was a genuine call for his people to revolt. Perhaps Sidhu didn't even realize the power of his own voice, but going forward, he would be on the radar as one of the most serious and dangerous people in Indian society. But he was also a musician first, and moving into 2021, he would continue doing what he does best, releasing music that captivated his people. In 2021, Sidhu began releasing singles ahead of his new album, the Moosetape. This album featured more production from Steel Bangles and had several UK features such as Stefflon Don, Tion Wayne, and Morrison. But during this massive rollout, Sidhu had also begun producing and starring in his own movies, 2 of which were released in 2021. Just like Tupac, Sidhu also indulged in many of the other arts beyond music, appearing as an actor in several prominent films. His main ones, Moosetape and Yes I Am Student, were both released in 2021. Both films tell the stories of struggles throughout the different parts of Sidhu's life, such as Yes I Am Student, documenting the struggles of being an international student and giving insight into the time that Sidhu spent in Canada whilst he was studying. Meanwhile, the film Moosetape is of course a story centered around a working class Jat man hailing from Sidhu's native village of Moosa. But then, on May the 14th, 2021, Sidhu would take to his Instagram to preview the release of his upcoming album Moosetape, and the next day, Sidhu released that highly anticipated album Moosetape online. It had 32 tracks on the tracklist, and this was by far Sidhu's most diverse and experimental album yet, with multiple sounds being explored, from Bhangra to Punjabi trap music, and even elements of UK drill. But the album also featured some of Sidhu's most introspective songs to date, such as the track 295. 295 is one of Sidhu's most played songs, with over 267 million streams on Spotify and over 500 million views on YouTube. The song 295 is widely considered Sidhu's most progressive piece, as on the track he even pushes back against the Sikh establishment. The song was written in retaliation to the earlier criticism Sidhu had received during the controversy surrounding his song Jati Jion More Wagi. Now that song and the backlash within the Sikh community resulted in a section 295 being filed in the Indian Penal Code against Sidhu, essentially a charge of insulting the religion after he rapped about sacred Sikh religious figures in his song. This new song 295 is written from Sidhu's father's perspective during the time that people were protesting in front of his house in the middle of that controversy. The song begins with Sidhu's father questioning him as to why he's so upset, and rapping from the perspective of his father, Sidhu would question the real motives of the protesters who were against him, accusing some of them of just looking for money. Now, Sidhu was encouraging his listeners to speak the truth, telling them that if they ran into trouble, then they were doing something right. However, even though Sidhu was addressing the listener, he was the protagonist of the 295 story himself. The song kind of cast Sidhu as the victim of unfair criticism from the Sikh community, and it would even use the same religious symbolism that he appeared to be challenging, referencing people wearing turbans throwing criticism at him but who are not fully baptized, essentially calling the people hating on him hypocrites. The song also aimed to provoke political leaders who are corrupt, who Sidhu said would be punished. Now, Sidhu's previously discussed that he understands the impact his lyrical content will have on the listener, therefore he's very calculated with the choice of topics that he chooses to put in his music.
Everyone is focusing on guns in music.
Do you think songs affect people's mindset?
Yes, they do and won't deny it.
But how do you manage that impact?
How do you neutralize it? With proper guidance? But you cannot guide everyone unless you have a proper system of education and guidance.
So, Moosetape had controversial political points to make, but Moosetape was also a very experimental album that aimed to get widespread international appeal. Now, not every song was so introspective, as it featured the more ignorant and braggadocious style songs that we all love as fans of Western rap. In fact, one of my favourite Sidhu songs ever was also on the Moosetape, the track IDGAF, with the UK's own certified gangster rapper Morrison appearing. IDGAF had a booming beat and boastful bars, and was a quintessential Western rap track. Sidhu would actually even rap the chorus of the song in a mixture of both English and Punjabi, basically rapping something crazy that he's done in Punjabi, then following that up in English saying he doesn't even give an F about it. For example, Sidhu would boast about his big industry connections, mentioning the track that he's on the phone chatting to Drake, but that's not even a big deal to him, and he doesn't give an F. Prophetically, elsewhere on the chorus, Sidhu would even foreshadow his own tragic destiny, comparing himself to the late great Nipsey Hussle, rapping that the lifestyle he's living means that he has to die like Nipsey, but once again, he doesn't give an F. And then, one of my favourite UK rappers, Morrison, hops hops on the track with a verse that showed he had truly done his homework on Sidhu's culture. Morrison would rap about being knee-deep in the trap house and cutting down crops like a Jat from Sidhu's hometown, as well as busting more guns than the previously mentioned Indian shooter Sanjay Dutt. Morrison will rap about how he's a gangster from England, but he rolls with Indian gangsters, and it's a true banger. And the project featured other stars of the UK rap and drill scene who were indeed certified in the streets, like the banger of a track that features N9's Tion Wayne, titled Celebrity Killer, another collaboration that didn't disappoint and was produced by Steel Bangles. The music video was even filmed in the iconic Forest Gate estate in East London, the original hometown of UK savage CB, who is now in jail riding a life sentence for aiming a shotgun at the police. And grime legend DEE also makes a random appearance in the video. On the track, Sidhu was on straight gangster business, singing about his Mauser pistol hanging from his jeans, as well as mentioning that where he is, death follows, and threatening his enemies, with many lyrics referencing spraying up cars with bullets and how his enemies are given their signature with hollow point bullets to the head. Sidhu also flexes his political influence, saying that whichever party he favors will get praise. Tion Wayne then gives Sidhu a slick verse in English with his signature flow and all the expected lyrics and references to things like puncturing his op's lungs with a knife. The song and video was a banger, and featuring one of the top charting UK drill rappers and filming in a notorious London hood really made outsiders respect Sidhu's gangster. Even in his foreign tongue and an unconventional style of rapping, UK rap and drill fans would still be hyped by how hard Sidhu's verse went, even though they couldn't understand a word of it. So the Moosetape was a roaring success for Sidhu Moose Wala. The tape quickly passed 1 billion streams on Spotify, an achievement that most Western rappers can only dream of. Sidhu Moose Wala was in motion as one of Punjabi music's biggest stars, but behind the music, his political ambitions were growing too, and by the end of 2021, Sidhu made a decision that at the time caused many of his Sikh fans to turn their backs on him, and soon he would be jumping into politics with both feet, and unfortunately making himself a huge target in the process.